So you can calculate the photon flux using the formula given here. So depending upon how much power you are using and what wavelength of photons you are using, from that you are able to calculate how many photons are involved in the interaction. So now, for example, if you take different common sources, so what are the common sources generally we use in the laboratories? Or common sources in this case, common light sources. Okay, so in the common light sources, for example, if you take a laser, I'm taking an examples of helium neon laser, so which is a gas laser, so where it's combination of helium and neon as an active medium. So this will produce a lasing action which is giving a power of 10 milliwatt, and whatever the output is coming in, so you are actually focusing to a few micrometers. So right now, for example, I'm saying I'm focusing to 20 micron spot. Okay, so how we are focusing we will see later. Maybe you are aware that how one can focus the light, so using lens. So if you use the lens, then you are able to focus the light with the depending on the what focal length, so how far you can focus, at what sizes you can focus, that can be decided with the what is the beam diameter you are using and what is the lens focal length you are using. Okay, so this common laser system will able to produce 10 power 26 photons per second in the per meter square area. So these many number of photons can be produced with this laser. The same laser, if you make it 1 milliwatt laser, then it will reduce to 10 power 21 these photons per second meter square. So now if you take a bright sunlight, so that means in the very hot in the summer, so the summer that can be able to produce the flux of 10 power 18 photons per second meter square. So that I'm talking about the bright sunlight. See the laser which is at 1 milliwatt, generally we call it a very low power lasers. At 1 milliwatt laser is able to produce much higher photon flux compared to a sunny day sunlight or like a hot sunlight. Still it is able to produce 10 power 8. It's almost now, even you see a very low power laser, for example your laser pointer, what you are seeing, that itself is capable of producing more than your sunlight, the photon flux. So that is the greatest advantage of the lasers. So now indoor light levels, so indoor in the same sunlight you take in the indoors. Okay, so when it penetrates to your window glasses, then it come into your indoors, that even 10 power 18 you may reduce to 10 power 16. So I'm talking about indoor light. Okay, so like in the homes and where the when light passes through the windows, in the indoor areas you will get 10 power 16 photons per centimeter for second meter square. So now if you compare the other common source what we observed in the our surroundings, that is one more is moonlight. So we are talking about sunlight. Now moonlight, the moonlight contains 10 total photons per second per meter square. Okay, now if you see what is the photon flux in the moonlight and sunlight, you can see the difference of, that is the reason the moonlight it's always dimmer compared to your sunlight, even at the indoor conditions. Okay, so this is a basic difference between different common sources, how the number of photons within a meter square area. So now we will talk about how you can convert. This is a certain wavelength, a defined wavelength of electromagnetic radiation. So now, okay, so this now becomes the wavelength is reduced. So now wavelength reduced, your energy will be, this is E1 and E2. Your energy E2 is much greater than the E1. So you know that your energy E equals to h nu, that is nothing but hc by lambda. So your E is proportional to 1 over lambda. Your lambda increases, so that means if lambda increases, this lambda increases, E decreases. If your lambda decreases, E increases. The similar way you can see here now, our lambda is higher in this case 1, that is E1, and here your lambda 2 is shorter, so then your E2 is higher. So now one can convert your energy to wavelength. Conversion can be done with this formula. So that is E equals to h nu means hc by lambda. So from this, so your h is constant, so that your h is nothing but a Planck's constant. It has a specific value, it's a finite value, and c also a constant. So eventually, if you do your math, so you will get your energy in terms of the electron volts. In terms of your electron volts is exactly matched with 1240 by your lambda in nanometers. Okay, so if you take your lambda in nanometers, you can get energy in electron volts. So for example, in the last few minutes back we talked about a 400 nanometer. Okay, so 400 nanometer is your blue light. Blue light means the wavelength of the light is blue. So now you get your energy in electron volts. Okay, so now you can see here. Okay, 4 by 4, so that is nothing but 3.1. Okay, so now the energy of the photon of 400 nanometer is equals to 3.1 electron volts. So if you know your wavelength, you can always calculate the energy of the photon corresponding to that wavelength. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so now we also discussed about photon has a momentum, right? Photon has a momentum because see, photons has energy. So now we can see, because these photons of the wavelength of 400 nanometer, so they have energy. When they have energy, they have some free velocity, they should have momentum. So now your energy can be written as C into P. So that is your momentum equation. So the momentum is E by C. So now your E already you know that H nu by C. So from this you can always calculate back. So in the free space, your momentum equals to E by C. So E also you can write as H cross omega by C. So H cross E is E, see same thing. If you remember E equals to H nu, you can write it down. This H, your frequency omega can be written as 2 pi nu. It's angular frequency. So now if you write it in terms of omega, so your nu equals to omega by 2 pi. So now your energy equals to h by 2 pi omega. So your this h by 2 pi can be written as h cross omega. That's what I have written your energy in terms of h cross omega c. So the omega by c is nothing but k. Okay, so k is a wave vector. It's in momentum space. So your p equals to momentum equals to h cross k. So this is one more relation you use in your quantum mechanics. Okay, so this is the momentum in free space. So free space in the means in the vacuum. So now if it in the medium, so your momentum will be different. If it is in the medium, different medium, I'm talking about the momentum of the wave, electromagnetic wave in a passing through a medium, your momentum becomes E by, instead of light velocity, it's traveling in your free space. In the vacuum, it is traveling with the light velocity c. Now in the medium, it is traveling with the velocity of v. So now your E is h cross omega by v. So what is v? V is the velocity of the wave in a medium. So that is how you define the velocity of the wave. Can be defined as it will propagate, will be the propagation of the velocity will be c by its refractive index. If the material has a refractive index is higher value, if material gives refractive index which is higher, then the velocity will be lower. If refractive index is higher, because 1 over higher value becomes lower value, so your velocity will be low. Okay, so that is in most of the materials, any material medium you take, most of the materials refractive index are higher than the 1. When it's higher than the 1 in the denominator part, you always velocity will be lower than the light velocity. You need a material which is less than the 1, then your speed will be higher than the light velocity. So it's a simple formula. So if you see v equals to c by n, okay, if your velocity of your refractive index is equals to 1, then your v equals to c. So the propagating wave can travel with the velocity of the speed of the light if n equals to 1. If n equals to less than 1, your velocity is greater than c, so that wave can propagate through a medium is faster than the light velocity. Okay, so that means, but no materials, no natural materials can behave like this. So all the natural materials having refractive index higher than the 1. So that is why when the electromagnetic radiation propagating through a material medium, its velocity will be reduced. So that means your n is higher, so you will get low velocity compared to the speed of the light. So now if you substitute this one, your v equals to c by n. In this equation, your momentum in a medium is h cross omega by c by n. So n will go up. So that is nothing but p equals to n h cross omega by c. So omega by c is nothing but k. So your momentum is depending upon refractive index also in the medium. So this is about the momentum of the photon when propagating through a medium. Okay, so now we will see certain uncertainty relations. So what are the uncertain relations you know from quantum mechanics?
That is the relation between momentum and position, and energy and time, and angular momentum and angular velocity.
Yes. So now we talk about the relations related to photons. So now what we know, photons carry the energy. So we talk about the change in energy. Okay, so that is one thing about the energy, and also it carries the momentum. So now we talk about the relations related to momentum and energy. So we talk about Heisenberg uncertainty relations for the photons. So now if you see here, one is energy. So the relation is delta E delta T is greater than or equals to h by 2. So this is one of the Heisenberg uncertainty relation. So what does it mean? What is the meaning of this relation? Can any one
For
of you answer?
for a given amount of time period, as in the for a given amount of time interval, the energy that is measured for a particular wave would as in vary, not vary, but it will be with an error like such. So because
I think before that maybe you can able to explain this one clearly. Delta P delta X.
It means we cannot measure the momentum and position of a wave at a time.
Yes. See, the delta P and delta X is represents the position and momentum of your wave. So now, if for example, if you able to find the momentum of the wave, then you cannot find the position of the wave at the same time. But if you know the position of the wave, you cannot find the momentum of the wave. So you cannot find simultaneously. So that is the uncertainty. If we know one parameter, we cannot find the other parameter. In these two parameter relations, you can only find one at a given time. Okay, so that precise measurement is not possible due to uncertainty in the measurements. It's almost impossible. So that is why the Heisenberg uncertainty relations will tell you cannot precisely measure these two parameters, either your energy or a time or the position and momentum at the same time. So similar for these photons. The photons also carries the momentum, and now if you know the momentum, you cannot find the position of the photon. And similarly, if you know the time, you cannot find the energy. And if you know the energy, you cannot find the time. So these are actually correlated. They are actually correlated. How it correlated you can see. So if delta E can be written as H cross delta omega delta T greater than or equals to H. So you know that E equals H cross omega. So that H cross is a constant. So now whatever the error in your energy can be written as error in omega. So your H cross gets cancelled. Delta omega delta T greater than or equals to 1 by 2. So your delta omega, it represents a bandwidth, a frequency band. It represents a bandwidth. Your delta T is a time domain. It represents the time period. In terms of your lasers, you can talk about it's a pulse width. Okay, so laser having a pulses. See now, for example, lasers, if you see the pulsed lasers, it doesn't emit the light continuously with the time gap. For example, this is the time. So at different, at a certain time gap, but there's this assume these are all equal time gaps. That is delta T1 time gap. Okay, so it is emitting the light at a with a certain time period, and sequentially it's emitting. Now your pulse width is nothing but, now you see as a straight line, but if you zoom in, if you're in a Gaussian pulse, you will get like this. So this is your delta T. So this actually I'm drawing in a closer picture. It is like this. That is a pulse. That is a light pulse or from a pulse lasers. Then it has certain width associated with. So that width measurement, if you see, if you know the frequency, what are the number of frequency components in that pulse, if you know that, it is difficult to measure your pulse width. If you know the pulse width, the error in your delta omega will be difficult. But what this can be given you information, your delta omega is inversely proportional to your delta T. From these relations, you can actually know if you have more frequency components. If you see, you have more frequency components in your light source, then this will be, your delta T will be shorter. That means you can generate like highly temporal, that means a good time resolution can be achieved having light source with more frequency components. So what does it mean? For example, in the pulse laser, initially it starts with the microsecond lasers. Okay, microsecond lasers. Then over the time we have nanosecond lasers. Then we have picosecond lasers. Now we have femtosecond lasers. Micro means 10 power minus 6 seconds. So that means the pulse will interact few microseconds with the medium. So each pulse can be interact within that duration of the time. So nanosecond laser means the pulse width is in terms of nanoseconds. It can interact a few nanoseconds with the material. So this is picosecond. It's a 10 power minus 12. Femtosecond is 10 power minus 15 seconds. So with these lasers, you are achieving a time resolution. So this basic Heisenberg-Einstein relation is actually giving information saying that if we have light have frequency components, delta omega is much higher, then you can actually produce short pulses or ultra short pulses, you call the time resolution. So now if you ask me why time resolution is important, to study the fundamental science, for example, electron motion inside an atom or inside a material. So these are all at the time resolutions. If you have a better time resolution, you can see the events. Okay, so your detector, for example, our eye can see the events which are slower than the which are faster than the milliseconds. So that means if the events are less than millisecond, if the events are happening which are less than millisecond, our eye cannot detect. We cannot see that fast. For example, if the birds are flying, we cannot see how the motion of the wings. Yes, precisely we cannot see that. Okay, the feathers, how the movement of the feathers one to other, the relation we cannot see. To see that, our eye has a capability to resolve the time duration. So that's what these are. These lasers can resolve the time durations or times within femtoseconds. Okay, so that means you can capture the fast events happening in the nature using these pulse lasers. If the incident is happening very fast in picosecond, your femtosecond laser can capture. If the incidents are happening in the nanosecond regime or in a nanoseconds, then your picosecond able to capture those events. So this is nothing but kind of a camera. So now you have different cameras with the different shutter speeds. You can capture the events happening in the either video or in the photograph, different snapshot of the photograph. To take those snapshots, you should have a good time resolutions depending upon the how fast the events are you are recording. So this Heisenberg uncertain relation is giving information to how that achieve those resolutions. What are the frequency components you play with it? Okay, so in your electromagnetic radiation, you generate that electromagnetic radiation with a broad spectrum, then you can actually make your short pulse. So these things you can actually study in the laser whenever the laser concepts come into the picture, how one can able to make a short pulses. So that is not in this domain, in this engineering optics, that is a separate course. So if you are interested to see those things, you can actually visit my YouTube channel, so that there you can actually see the laser technologies course. So there actually I mentioned how one can generate the short pulses. Okay, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So could you explain what actually is pulse width? As in, what do you mean by pulse width?
So pulse width means, for example, now I talk about a laser system. Okay, so this laser is giving me light,
Yes, yes.
right? So now this is a continuous wave. That means you are always getting the light.
Yes.
And now with certain optical techniques, what I am doing is I'm not allowing the light goes continuously. I'm actually in the laser itself. I'm blocking light. I'm releasing at different intervals.
Okay.
Okay. So now in the different intervals, I'm actually getting the laser pulses. These are pulse lasers.
Pulse lasers. Okay.
Okay. So that means this is each pulse.
Okay.
So now from the laser, this is the first pulse coming. That is time t0. After time, maybe you can say talk about a millisecond. After 1 millisecond, there's next pulse come from laser. After a millisecond, there's next pulse coming. Okay. So now I'm picking one pulse.
Okay.
See, this pulse in time domain, you cannot say exactly 0 second. it cannot have a one spike like your delta function. It
Uh,
always has a width associated with it. You understand?
Width I didn't get.
Yes. How much you zoom in? Like if you see now, when I
Uh-huh.
draw
Okay.
when I draw a line, you can see simple line. But I
Hmm.
zoom in, it's
And
not
it
a
will be
simple line.
Gaussian.
Yes.
Okay.
Now this having a width, that width is your time domain delta t, or we generally call delta tau.
Uh,
Okay, so this width is called a pulse width.
okay, sir.
So now when this pulse is interacting with the material medium, okay,
Hmm.
when it passes through that material, so only this, for example, this is for example 1 picosecond. This width is 1 picosecond. That means this pulse will interact with 1 picosecond time. Within 1 picosecond, you can interact to the material.
Okay. Yes, yes, it's fine, huh?
Okay, that you generally call a pulse width of the laser.
Okay. Okay, sir. Sir, so
Okay.
this T2 minus T1, what is this? This is also pulse width.
No, this is the actually repetition rate. How many pulses are coming in a time?
Oh, okay. Fine, fine, fine. Okay, fine,
Yeah,
sir.
generally that you call a rep rate.
Rep rate. Okay.
That means
Okay.
a repetition rate. It's actually in terms of 1 hour. Its repetition rate you generally call as a units of hertz. Hertz means 1 hour second. So that means how many pulses are coming in 1 second. For example, laser is giving 1 kilohertz laser. Okay, the
Hmm.
repetition rate of the laser is 1 kilohertz. That means it is giving 1000 hertz. That is nothing but 1000 pulses
1 second.
per second. So
Okay.
what you are seeing here, number of pulses in 1 second, the laser is producing
1000.
1000 pulses.
Okay.
Okay, if you similarly you talk about 10 hertz laser, that means 10 pulses in a second.
Yes,
Now
sir.
you can calculate 1000 pulses giving in a 1 second. That now tell me what is the gap between pulse to pulse.
Pulse to pulse.
See,
Uh,
now the laser delivered the one pulse. Next pulse when it will come. That also you know from this one,
hmm. Yes.
right?
Hmm.
So now in 1 second it is giving 1000 pulses.
Yes.
That means the gap between each pulse is
1/1000 of a second.
yes. That means 1 millisecond.
Yes, yes. Okay.
So that means laser is producing the pulse every 1 millisecond.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so that is the meaning of the repetition rate and how the laser is producing your pulses, laser pulses.
Okay, sir. Fine.
Yeah, the same analogy you can continue for different rep rates. So now we have wide variety of lasers. It can run from single shot. That means only one pulse will come out. So you press it, it will give only one pulse.
Hmm.
2 megahertz lasers. Okay, so all this mega means 10 power
Or 6.
6 hertz. So single shot to and means one pulse to 10 power 6 pulses you can generate.
Okay, sir.
Okay, yeah.